If I think back to this time last year when we were all fighting over toilet paper, while we had no idea we wouldn't get to see live shows for several months, it's hard to believe we weren't fighting over vinyl records instead. My guest in this episode is Paige Brodsky of Streetlight Records Shop in Santa Cruz, California. When I first approached Paige to be on the podcast, I had in mind that I would talk to her about how her record store has weathered all the changes of the music industry in the last couple of decades. Certainly there are some great lessons to be learned from her about expanding your market, partnering with other entities and trade associations, and leveraging relationships within your community. But I have to admit, the most fun part of our conversation was just geeking out about music, about collecting vinyl and listening to music, and experiencing live shows and collecting ticket stubs, and sharing all of these experiences with other people. There are so many dimensions to it that Spotify and social media will never be able to replace. And that's why record shops like Streetlight exist. For a lot of people, and even today, it's where the experience begins. So here's what I suggest you do for this episode. Heat up your lava lamp, and let's tune in, and geek out with Paige. Paige, how are you doing?
Good, Vinay. How are you doing?
I'm fine. So I want the people who can view this, because this will be on YouTube, I want them to know that unlike my backdrop, your backdrop is actually a real recording studio, right?
Tell me about that. It is, yes. It functions as many things: recording studio, practice space, man cave, overnight YouTube viewing spot for my boyfriend. Yes, yeah. We got some keyboards, and one of those guitars back there is mine, but the rest are his.
Good. Yeah. So legit recording studio, production studio, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, great. I wanted to hear about a number of different things. I'm very interested in sort of the recent resurgence of vinyl. And also we can talk a little bit about how being a retail operation, how you were impacted during COVID-19 and how you repositioned your entire business and in a way found some new opportunity. So why don't we start with that? Tell us just a little bit about Streetlight Records.
Yes. So I am the manager of our store in San Jose, California. We have a second store in Santa Cruz, about 30 miles apart with a little mountain range in between. And I am also involved in marketing and promotions for both of the stores. And the Streetlight history kind of goes way back. It started in somewhere around 75 is like as near as we can figure. The owner had a used stereo component shop. He would like do repairs and buy and sell used stereo components, and kind of by like 77 or so, it morphed into a record store. And at the time it was one location. It was a very small neighborhood store in San Francisco. Eventually they opened a second neighborhood store in San Francisco about a mile away. And then in the early 80s, they opened the store in San Jose, in a small location. 92, it moved into a giant building. We're in like a 10,000 square foot space with maybe about 7,000 square feet of retail space. And then in 97, our Santa Cruz store opened, and it's sizable. It's like 5,500, 6,000 square feet. And I started working at Streetlight in San Francisco in 89. So I'm on year number 32 now.
Wow.
So this all I've done in my adult life.
Wow, that's fantastic. So far, the era that you're describing, or the time period that you're describing, this is, when CDs were brand new, and at that time there was kind of a resurgence, or you could say kind of a boom, because a lot of stuff was being re-released, and it was a really good time. Tell me what has happened since MP3s.
We've seen so many format waves come and go. The big fear, of course, is that the current vinyl resurgence is only going to be a wave, which it might be, but it's got a long trajectory so far. But yes, when MP3s came along, that was at a time where vinyl was passé, and there wasn't much vinyl being manufactured. New releases were coming out pretty much just on CD, occasionally on cassette. And the MP3 did hit us fairly hard. And interestingly, that was one of the things that we thought about at that time was, well, we want to get people in here to have the experience of being with other music lovers and enjoying the physical product. Well, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have to draw them in with events. Start hosting in-store performances, start having new release parties, start, do what you can to bring people into the store and remind them about the value of the physical product. And we made it through the lean times, and then this vinyl resurgence in the last 10 years or so has just been, a lifesaver.
Yeah.
And it's huge. It is growing exponentially. Pressing plants can't keep up. Demand is far outstripping supply at this point, which has its frustrations, but also is a good thing too.
Right. Yeah. So you're saying that pressing plants can't keep up with supply. So that must mean the cost is also being driven up.
Oddly, it's interesting. I don't actually know. You would think so, yes, but I don't actually know what the true cost of manufacturing an LP is, other than we know it's much more expensive than a CD. But what's odd to me, and this still mystifies me this far into it, that a good chunk of the people who are buying vinyl are young, teenagers or folks in their 20s. And like right now, we're in, February, there's a lot of those people that got turntables for Christmas. So they're starting their record collections. And it's fascinating to me that those customers will spend $30 on a new record, but they will not spend $3 on a used CD. So the price thing just doesn't really seem to be an obstacle for some reason.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. I never thought about that.
When I was 16, I didn't have $30 to spend on a record, so I'm not really sure where the money's coming from, but I'm happy it's there.
Yeah. Even more so now, I guess it's a collectible thing. It's just like, trading cards. I think it's in that same category, right? It's not just about the music. Vinyl is so much more rare. It's become a kind of a pride of ownership thing, right?
I think so. I mean, I think, in pre-COVID times when people, in this younger demographic would get together, they're having gatherings built around vinyl. Then their friends bring vinyl and they can see your vinyl collection and you can see some of their vinyl collection, and everybody's playing records like it was in the 70s.
Yeah. That's right.
It's beautiful. Like I love it. I'm so happy that this, younger generation is getting to experience some of that, which was lost to that whole period of time in the 90s and the early aughts.
Yeah. And not only that, but I don't know what it's been replaced with. I mean, because it's not just about the product, the physical product, holding it and being able to, hang out with your friends and spin records. I mean, it's music, and you absolutely cannot make a video of yourself, post it online and share it with your friends. It's not sharing an experience. This is me. This is what I did. This is what I had for lunch. This is me doing a dance or throwing a bucket of ice on myself. Who gives a damn? That's not music. And it's a very hard thing to translate to people not in our age group who didn't grow up with something like that. It was not just a hobby. It was everything. It was what you did after school.
And it centers around the human connection. It's like music as a way of connecting to your fellow human being. And it is like there are two universal languages, math and music, like that everybody can, math, maybe not everybody. You have to have certain skills to understand math, but it is a way of communicating with other people and connecting with other people. Music is, and that's priceless. And I suppose you could have that with an MP3, pull out your iPod, hey, listen to, but it's not the same. Absolutely
not the same. To hold it in your hands, you have the liner notes, you have the artwork, and it's, it's at a size where you can actually, you can actually enjoy the detail of it, right?
And part of those details are, like you said, the liner notes. Who plays on this album? who are they thanking? Who are they naming as their influences? And then you branch out from there, and like that's your journey. And like everybody's music journey is different than the next person's.
Oh yeah.
I feel like, I've always felt this way, like looking at somebody's bookshelves and looking at somebody's record shelves just tells you so much about who they are. And there are no two record collections that are the same.
Mm-hmm.
There are no two sets of bookshelves that are the same, and there are no two humans that are the same. And it's like, from a psychology standpoint, very interesting to me.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, you just mentioned something that I never thought of before. It is kind of like a book collection. I guess that could be the closest thing, because even though you may not be reading, you're not experiencing it at the same time as someone else reading it, but I guess that's what book clubs are for, right? People do read it and they get together and they talk about it and they just
A shared experience.
shared it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like live music, like going to see concerts.
Yeah, of course. Nothing compares to that.
In a similar vein, oh yeah, I've got that on vinyl, and that, oh yeah, I saw them play at the Palladium in 19 blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights. And that was also at a time where, I don't know if people do this anymore, but when you used to, get printed tickets and you used to keep them in a, what do you call it? Oh boy, what do you call? I've lost the word for it.
Oh, like a photo album or something, or
yeah, right. There was a name for it at the time, and now I totally forgot. That's how long ago it was, I guess.
I was going to say shoebox. You keep them in a shoebox.
You can keep it, yeah, you can keep it in a shoebox, or there was another name. Anyway, okay, so let's bring it to present day, or at least 2020. COVID hits, a lot of retail. Not a lot. Most retail operations are shut down for a little while. You were doing in-person events. Is that considered the same as like a music performance? It was, I guess. You had artists coming in, right?
Right. And it might be, our two stores are in two different counties. So it's been interesting to try to make sure you keep straight what's allowed in each individual county. But the county that our San Jose store is in was very explicit. No singing whatsoever. No singing where there's gatherings, just, because the risk of transmitting COVID was so much higher. So our in-store events came to a screeching halt. Because that wasn't our core business and our financial security didn't depend on it, we were able to work around that. And did a few things. Our Santa Cruz store just launched a series called Live from the Light, where they're live streaming. Sometimes it's performances. They have one coming up next weekend that is two of the employees spinning 80s metal records, which including some hair metal, I believe. So, that kind of a thing. However, it's hard to monetize that. So that's just more of a profile, like providing some good content for your followers. And I mean, who doesn't love a good, 80s hair metal set, right?
Of course.
But the in-store performances did have to come to a halt. But we also started partnering with some independent film companies who, had been hoping to release their films in theaters and now weren't able to. So they were partnering with independent record stores to sell tickets for online screenings. And there would be a revenue share between the production company and the record store. Each record store would have their own individual sales link. And, that seemed like a great idea. Again, it's not enough to save a business, but, you put all the little pieces together and somehow you hobble through, in terms of selling product, we couldn't do curbside. We couldn't have people in the store. So we were just limited to selling online and had a bare bones staff that was during those 3 months that we were completely shut down. Uh, just had that bare bones staff that was filling online orders and, trying to do a little social media, and we got through that
Mm-hmm.
and PPP loans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank God for that. Right.
Yeah.
So tell me about that, or tell me at least what you know about it. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. I went out with my girlfriend. We went to a restaurant, and, we were inside. They were observing all the protocols and, distance and all that stuff, but they couldn't have live music. And normally they would have a single person on an acoustic guitar, somewhere in the corner. But it surprised me that they couldn't have that. Now, I'm sure on paper, or somebody who works for the government that has to define these things, it would be very difficult to say, well, this kind of live performance is okay, but that one not. But generally, what do you know? What is the reasoning behind, you can get people in a restaurant, they could sit not very far from each other, but they can't be listening to live music? Why is that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess I think there was that one COVID super spreader event with a church choir that was
Mm-hmm.
practicing, and like, dozens of people got sick as a result. And, I think the government or the, public health departments got nervous about that. What's interesting to me, and this is where the county where our San Jose store is, doesn't allow singing, but they again, they're drawing very specific lines. They do allow live music, no wind instruments and no singing. So what they're referring to, and I know New York did this as well, as incidental music.
Mm-hmm.
So background music,
Yeah.
basically. It's not necessarily the focus, which, is great that at least some opportunities for those musicians and those venues, those restaurants have opened up. But yeah, I mean, it's just fear of, the singing projecting the virus. And it is so different, like you were mentioning, it's so different from city to city, just depending on the public health department, depending, I suppose, on the political climate, just, and we're in a very restrictive spot.
Mm. That's very weird.
It is.
So they're afraid some person who has a good voice is going to infect everyone in the place, right?
Yes. And actually, I will say that I have a friend who has a record store on the East Coast, and they did an event, and I don't know if there was a guitarist. I don't know if they were singing or not, but a couple days later, they came down with symptoms, and the whole staff got tested, and a bunch of people on the staff had COVID. So I guess there's something to it, but I also I don't know the specifics. Like I don't know if they were all hanging out having a beer together, or who knows.
Right. Yeah, and it could be the proximity, and you're right, it could be the moment where everybody's cheering and yelling in each other's ears. Yeah, right. Could be any of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like if you could do it in an outdoor space. This is what's going on in Southern California. I don't know if you've seen it up there too, but there are some venues that figured out, or somehow it was allowed, that they could have live music, but the musicians have to be separate from the audience. So the audience is outside on the patio, like it's a restaurant or something like that. But the musicians are inside on the stage, and then they just stream the music outdoors. Okay,
Yeah, right. There is. I think that in Santa Cruz County, I think they are allowed to have outdoor live music. Still not in Santa Clara County, where our San Jose store is.
Yeah.
Still not allowed to have even the outdoor singing going on.
Yeah.
Just the music. But my hope is that we will reach herd immunity before the end of this year, and musicians and venues will be able to get back to doing what they do.
That's what it looks like. Yeah. I mean, as far as all the shows and all the bands that I was following for the last year, now I'm starting to see what are the months that they're starting to fill up again, where the reschedules are happening. Some are as early as April, but yeah, it looks like summertime they're kind of expecting. At least in California, where there's a lot of outdoor venues,
Right. I mean, if you live in North Dakota, like that's a
Right.
whole different thing.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what they do?
I
Well,
know.
I'm sure somebody knows what they do. Go ahead and message us and tell us what you do.
There you go.
But all right, so good. Let's get back to kind of where you're at. You started to talk about how you were impacted,
Mhm.
but you did find a strategy for recovery in a way. I won't say full recovery, but you're operating. You're able to have events of some kind again. Tell us where you're at right now.
Our biggest event of the year, hands down, every year is Record Store Day, which is, for those who aren't familiar with it, labels, artists, management get together and decide um, on what to put out on vinyl, and it's limited edition runs, and it's exclusive to independent record stores that participate in Record Store Day. And Record Store Day is also an umbrella organization to which Streetlight belongs. And it normally happens in April, and these shutdowns happened in March, so it was pretty clear that we weren't going to be able to do it. So it got, but at that point that the shutdown happened, production on all of these pieces was already done. So that was in the bag. They're just sitting in warehouses. And Record Store Day got pushed off by a couple months. Then it became clear that wasn't going to work, and it got pushed off a little bit more and split. Those titles that would all have normally come out on one day then got split up amongst 3 different days, starting in August, September, and October. Where we used to, and all, I think most indie record stores did this, people would line up the night before, camp out outside. It'd be a big old party. You'd make new friends. And like we were talking about the human connection earlier, people are talking about, well, what are you wanting to get? And, oh, what are your favorite artists? And people talking about music all night long until the
Yeah.
store opened the next morning. But in a pandemic, you don't really want people to camp out overnight, huddled with each other the night before. So that's where the online component became important. And we had people sign up for a lottery and then would draw their names randomly to give them appointment times. And so we would have about 20 people in the store, about 20 people waiting outside the store, and then the next round of appointments, weren't there yet. So we could keep people 6 feet apart. Everybody was masked, kept everybody safe. And we did that 3 months in a row, which was a lot of work, but it was hugely successful. And when you added those 3 Record Store Day drops together, it was probably financially about twice the size of what a normal record store day was.
Holy
for us.
cow.
So it ended
Wow.
up being a really great thing. And a lot of people liked the early signups on online, rather than having to wake up at 2 a.m. and go stand in line or start the night before. I mean, some people like, there are a few people that like that whole like camping out for concert tickets the night before kind of thing. But I think a lot of stores are going to continue to keep at least some of those practices as things open up again, because it was nice and organized and civilized, and it was lovely. it was great.
Right.
And well, like being connected with all of these other stores that are a part of Record Store Day, we had several weekly Zoom calls where people were just brainstorming. Well, this is what I'm going to do. And I would say, I'm copying your idea. You don't mind, do you? And then I might have an idea and someone else is going to copy it. And it was good because the restrictions were different in each location. And these stores that were talking on the Zoom call were all over the United States. So people could find someone else who was in a similar situation and brainstorm and come up with ideas. And we just heard left and right in reports afterwards that it really worked well for everybody. But the key was being able to communicate with other people who were doing the same thing you are.
Right.
And that was like, I would have been lost without that.
Right, right. So, and this is a trade association of independent record stores. Is that right?
Yeah, so the Record Store Day organization, there are actually three different independent record store coalitions. Streetlight is a part of one called the Coalition of Independent Music Stores. There's Ames, Association of Independent Music Stores, I think, like that. And Doors, Department of Record Stores. So the three of them formed the Record Store Day organization, which now runs the Record Store Day and a smaller version of an event on Black Friday that we call Record Store Day Black Friday. But I mean, one of the best things about that organization is just having easy access to other people, whether they're in your coalition or they're in a different coalition or they're not affiliated with a coalition. Just having all of that the contact information aggregated, or being able to email one person and say, hey, do you have a contact info for this other person? And
Sure.
seeing something online, that I want to copy. I'm like, oh, I like the way they're going to run their program. I'm going to send him an email and see if I get, oh yeah, take it, run with it, do it. And we saw, I imagine you probably keep up on this too, with the pandemic, the creation of the National Independent Venue Association.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
These venues are suffering. Let's get together. Let's make an organization. We've got our organization. Okay, great. Let's start petitioning Congress. And lo and behold, Save Our Stages Act, is included in the last stimulus package.
That's right. That was
you
huge.
Find people who do what you do and pick their brains.
Absolutely. And you're right. That is kind of the reason why I started this podcast, is I thought, well, there's probably a lot of people who are personal trainers, people who are independent artists. Where are they going? How are they who are they getting ideas from? How are they collaborating? How, dance studios, music teachers, theater companies.
Theater and the arts in general, just so hard hit, and you can't take a live theater performance and you can put it online, but it doesn't quite translate. We know the streaming concerts don't quite translate, but it can build a bridge between here and there.
It does. And this is what I've learned from talking with people on this podcast now. Those who were able to got inventive about what they were doing. So I've talked to theater companies who figured out how to do a whole theater production on a Zoom call where you have multiple windows going on, and each one is a different actor and they're all interacting with each other. They created a performance. It's a live performance and it's different. But more importantly, what they were able to accomplish is stay connected with their audience. And audiences were receptive, because it gave them a place to be. It gave them something to do. It gave them, that might have been, whether it be their yoga class or it was a local venue or something that they normally supported, and it was part of their weekly or regular ritual to patronize that place. It gave them that thing to do. Which people don't have at home. What happened? Where do we go? We don't have the happy hours. We don't have the flexibility to go out, but at least you can stay connected to that thing that's part of your life, right?
I think that, if you have a local theater company like we do in a little mountain town where I live, you want to support them. You want to see them survive. And so you as that theater company or as that event creator, you need to give them an opportunity to do that. They want to give you money. They want to support you.
That's right.
And yeah, it is really interesting and inspiring to see all the different ways that people have made that happen.
Yeah. And even more inspiring is that, audiences stepped up. Despite what you read on the news, how, Netflix's stock is going through the roof and this and that. And nobody was talking about what we're talking about right now, that there was still a lot of things happening creatively, and there were still people who were supporting it.
Well, and a great example of that, I don't know if you follow Todd Rundgren at all, but I think last night was the first of a series of shows that he's doing from Chicago, but he's like geolocating the audiences. I don't quite know
Oh,
how
okay.
it works, but you know, leave it to Todd Rundgren to
Sure.
be
Yeah,
creative
right.
about something like that.
That is interesting. No, I'm going to check that out. I did not
Yeah,
hear about that.
yeah.
Very cool. So let's just recap. Record Store Day is now happening when?
It is scheduled for June 12th. And it looks like that will be able to happen, knock on wood. If there's some sort of change, the group will adapt and message it all out. But yeah, recordstoreday.com is where you keep tabs on all of that and what the releases are going to be. Those are going to get announced. They're usually announced in early March. I don't know if that timeline is different or not, but we're expecting it to happen. And I don't think we'll be having live music like sometimes the stores do on Record Store Day. That may have to wait a little bit, but it's going to happen.
It's going to happen, of course. Tell everyone again your website and what they will find when they go there, because you guys have so much going on now.
Yeah, we made a few changes when the pandemic hit. It's streetlightrecords.com, and you've always been able to order. It's the inventory there is connected to what's in our San Jose store. So you've always been able to order any of the new items that we have there, some of the used items that we have there. But when the pandemic hit, we decided, since this was an option, to connect our website with our distributor's warehouse. So it just multiplied probably by 20 times, 30 times, maybe even more than that, the number of items that are available. So you place an order on the Streetlight website. We might not have it in our store, but our distributor has it in their location and they ship it to the customer directly from their warehouse, but we get the money for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when and it's also sort of like, in a way, purchasing on consignment. So when we're carrying items in our store, we're paying for them up front. We have them in the store and we're not making the money on it until we sell it to the customer. And in this respect, we're actually collecting the money from the customer before we have to pay for the item. So it's, a lot more financially doable. And at the same time, there's all sorts of like things I've never heard of that people are buying through our website now. And I'm so glad they can. I'm so glad that it's an option.
Right. And well, let's also mention it's not just about vinyls and CDs. People can buy downloads. I even saw on your website this morning, they can pre-order the next Taylor Swift album if they wanted to get that downloaded, right? So
yes, pre-orders are a big deal, particularly with vinyl these days, and particularly because a lot of artists are making a color variant just for indie record stores on vinyl, and it's usually a limited edition, and sometimes it sells out on pre-order. So if you're hoping to wait until the day it comes out to get a copy, not always a good idea, but you can do that, pre-ordering through the website. It's, downloads, CDs, DVDs, new and used, video games, all sorts of stuff.
Oh, even video games from your site?
Even video games, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that before. I will check that out. Well, Paige, it was really great talking with you, and
Thank you too.
Oh yeah, and I definitely learned some new things. And certainly I am going to go check out, I'm going to be part of this record store day on June 12th. I've never participated in it before, but now it seems like I can do it from where I'm at. So that's great.
Yes, you can. Although where are you in SoCal?
I'm in Orange County.
In Orange County. Okay. I don't know offhand what you're.
There are a couple down here. There are a couple of indie stores, and they have been around for a while. So I'm guessing they might be part of that same thing.
It's a fun time. What's better than getting together with your friends and talking about music?
Nothing. Other than, yelling in their ear with a beer in your hand, listening to your favorite band. That's the next best thing.
Right.
Okay, Paige, thanks so much. It was great talking with you.
Oh, thank you, Vinay. I had a wonderful time. Loved it.
Thank you. Yeah. And have a great summer.
Thank you. You too.